Hello, and welcome back to another tranquil journey through the annals of history. As you settle into your cozy bed or favorite armchair, preparing to delve into tonight's stark expedition, I invite you to leave a comment, sharing where in the world you're tuning in from and what time of day it is for you. It is always a heartening thought to know how vast the reach of our community of nocturnal historians truly is. If you enjoy these calm, meandering explorations of the past, consider subscribing to join our little community of history lovers seeking a restful night's sleep. Tonight, we journey not to a time of shining armor, but to a world of hardened leather and even harder realities. We are heading back to ancient Laconia, to a place where the greatest battle was not fought against a foreign army, but against the very air you breathed. Together, we will discover why you would never, ever survive a winter in ancient Sparta. Now, close your eyes. Imagine you are not in the warmth of your room, but are instead taking your first breath in a world entirely different. That first breath is not the sterile air of a modern hospital, but a piercingly cold gust, thick with the scent of damp earth, pine needles, and cold stone. This is the Laconian Plain. More specifically, the valley carved by the winding Eurotas River. This is your new home, Lacedaemon, the city you know as Sparta. Your first impression of this place for a moment might not be one of terror. In the summer, the sun is generous, the olive groves shimmer in a gentle breeze, and the Taygetos mountain range, standing sentinel to the west, is a picture of stoic, majestic beauty. But the summer is a fleeting deception, a brief intermission designed to lull you into a false sense of security. The true Sparta awakens in winter, when the first autumn rains turn the summer dust to thick mud, when the cold currents from the north crest the mountains and pour, unimpeded, into the valley. This land sheds its temperate disguise. It reveals its true nature, a vast, cold, and utterly unforgiving crucible. The winter here is unlike any you know. It may not have the absolute, soul-crushing temperatures of Siberia, nor the long, sunless nights of the Nordic lands. The Spartan winter is a thing of malicious, damp cold. The moisture from the Eurotas River rises, is trapped by the valley walls, and condenses into a pervasive fog and a chilling dew that clings to everything. The air feels liquid, adhering to your skin, and greedily leaching away every bit of your body heat. The ground rarely freezes into a solid, clean sheet of ice. Instead, it is perpetually damp, cold, and muddy, making every single step a conscious theft of warmth from the soles of your feet. And the mountains, the Taygetos range that stands like a god to the west, are no longer a scenic backdrop. They are a source of menace. When their peaks gather snow, the wind that comes howling down from them is like a razor's edge, slicing across the plain. There is no poetry in this wind. It is a purely physical assault. It will find every crack and seam in your simple dwelling, lift the hem of your thin tunic, and ensure that in every waking moment, and even in your dreams, you can never forget the most primal meaning of the word cold. But it is not this physical cold alone that guarantees your failure to survive. More chilling than the weather is the society, the very civilization built upon this land. Sparta, a name that has become a byword for austerity and severity, built its entire ethos around the rejection of comfort. This culture viewed comfort as a gateway to decadence, saw enjoyment as a form of weakness, and dismissed any beautiful thing without a martial purpose as superfluous. The Spartans did not develop technologies or strategies to fight the winter. Instead, they weaponized it. They harnessed the winter, revering it as a divine and necessary tool for forging the will of its citizens. For a Spartan, winter was not a season to be survived. It was the season when the state's machinery operated at peak efficiency. It was a natural sieve, automatically filtering out the weak, the sickly, the individuals not tough enough to belong. It was an invisible furnace, tempering those who remained into something harder, colder, more devoid of emotion-perfect components for the war machine. The cold you feel here is not an unfortunate accident of nature. It is a carefully maintained and exploited political resource. So as you stand on this land and feel that first biting wind, you must understand that you are not merely fighting low temperatures, humidity, and gales. You are fighting the philosophy of an entire civilization. Here, no one will offer you a thicker blanket, for that would make you soft. No one will build a larger fire for you, for that would dull your edge. You look around you, and you do not see comrades huddling together for shared warmth. You see pairs of watchful, judging eyes, observing you, weighing you, waiting to see if you will flinch in the face of nature's test. Your modern soul, with its ingrained notions of human rights, basic comforts, and self-preservation, is not an asset here. It is a fatal liability. Your body, accustomed to climate-controlled environments, your immune system, which has never been so brutally challenged, your mind, which craves a comfort and solace that is philosophically forbidden. Here all of these things mark you for failure. This is the first and most fundamental reason for your demise. The Spartan winter, by its very design, rejects you. Its coldness, a perfect, closed loop of natural and man-made cruelty, is engineered to purge anything un-Spartan, and you are the most un-Spartan thing of all. You have endured your first taste of the Laconian winter, a passive victim of its elemental cruelty. But now, your passive suffering is about to end, and a far more active form of torment is set to begin. You have reached the age of 7. This is not a milestone for celebration, for parties, or for the loving guidance of your parents. At 7 years old, your life as an individual, as a son, is over. The state has come for you. You are now enrolled in the Agoge. This is not a school. To call it a school is a profound misinterpretation. It is a systematic, 13-year-long process of dehumanization, designed to strip away your identity and remold you into a cog in Sparta's war machine. And this process is most brutally efficient during the winter. The warmth of your family's hearth, however meager it might have been, is now a distant, fading memory. You are marched to a barracks, a long, stark building of wood and stone. There are no private rooms, no personal spaces, no concept of solitude. You are herded together with other boys your age, all of you equally bewildered and terrified. The floor is cold, unforgiving stone. Your bed is a pile of reeds, which you are sent to gather yourself from the banks of the Eurotas River. In the summer, this is a simple, if uncomfortable task. In the winter, you must wade into the icy water, your bare legs turning a painful, mottled red, to rip the brittle reeds from the frozen mud with your bare hands. There is no blanket, no mattress, no pillow. The logic is simple and unyielding. A soft bed breeds a soft man. Your only comfort is the press of other shivering bodies around you, a warmth born not of affection, but of shared, desperate survival. The true test begins at dawn. A shrill horn blast shatters the cold stillness of the pre-dawn darkness. There is no gentle waking. You are thrown from your shallow, fitful sleep into the immediate and shocking reality of the cold. The warden of the boys, the Paidonomos, an older, battle-scarred citizen, who sees you not as a child, but as raw material, observes your every move. Any sign of hesitation, any shivering that looks too much like complaint, is met with a swift, sharp lash from a rod. You learn your first winter lesson in the Agoge. Pain is a more effective motivator than warmth. Then there is the matter of your clothing. You are issued a single garment, a himation, which is essentially a heavy woolen cloak. You will wear this same cloak, and only this cloak, all year round. In the summer, it is suffocating. In the winter, it is a cruel joke. It is your tunic, your blanket, and your only shield against the relentless wind and damp. You are forbidden from wearing any kind of footwear. The justification, of course, is that going barefoot hardens the feet, allowing you to traverse any terrain without complaint. The reality of this is a daily litany of misery. Your morning run does not take place on a prepared track, but across the frozen, rutted fields outside the city. Every step is a shock of cold that travels up your legs and settles deep in your bones. The frozen mud is littered with sharp stones and thorny weeds, now hard as daggers. Cuts are inevitable. You stumble, your bare foot landing on a shard of ice-hardened flint, and a sharp pain lances up your leg. You cannot cry out, you cannot even slow down. To do so would invite the scorn of your peers and the whip of the warden. You just keep running, the cold mud mixing with your warm blood, a perfect metaphor for your new life. Frostnip is a constant companion, your toes and fingers perpetually numb, tinged with a sickly blue-white hue. You learn to live with it, just as you learn to live with everything else. The physical training is merciless. Wrestling, mock battles with wooden weapons, spear throwing, and endless calisthenics. These are conducted outdoors, regardless of the weather. Imagine yourself, a boy of 8 or 9, clad only in a thin, damp cloak, standing in an open field as a cold rain turns to sleet. You are practicing formations, holding a heavy wooden shield. The icy water runs down your neck and back, pooling at your waist. Your hands, slick with cold and water, can barely grip your wooden spear, but you must hold it steady. You must stand in your designated spot without flinching. The cold saps your strength far faster than the exercise itself, but your instructor demands more, always more. To collapse is to fail, and in the Agoge, failure is a stain that can never be washed away. All this physical exertion, this constant battle just to maintain your core body temperature, requires a tremendous amount of calories. And here, the cruelty of the Agoge reaches a state of perverse genius. You are deliberately, systematically, underfed. The communal meals consist of the infamous black brotha, foul-tasting concoction of blood, pork, salt, and vinegar and a meager portion of barley bread. It is never enough. The gnawing hunger is a constant presence, a hollow ache in your belly that mirrors the cold in your limbs. This institutionalized starvation serves a purpose. It is designed to encourage you to steal. Stealing food is a critical part of your education, but it is a lesson with the highest stakes. If you successfully steal a loaf of bread, a piece of cheese, or a handful of figs, you are praised for your cunning and resourcefulness. But if you are caught and the guards and older boys are always watching, you are punished with a severity that seems wildly disproportionate to the crime. You will be whipped viciously and publicly. So you are faced with a stark choice every single day of the Spartan winter. You can obey the rules, subsist on your pathetic rations, and slowly waste away, your body too weak to fight the cold and endure the training. Or you can risk a brutal flogging for the chance to quell the desperate craving in your stomach. This is not a game. It is a calculated psychological trap. It teaches you to fear being caught more than you fear hunger, to value stealth and deception above all else. In the cold, dark nights of the barracks, you lie awake, your body shivering, your mind racing, plotting how you might snatch a morsel of food without being seen, knowing that the price of failure is sharp, immediate, and excruciating pain. This is the winter crucible of the Agoge. It does not just forge soldiers, it forges survivors who have had every ounce of childhood softness, empathy, and trust beaten and frozen out of them. Your education in suffering within the Agoge is mirrored by the environment of your supposed domestic life. Even before you were taken from your family, the concept of home as a sanctuary, a warm and safe haven from the outside world, simply did not exist. Now, as a ward of the state living in the barracks, the idea is even more alien. But to understand the full scope of your winter ordeal, you must understand the Spartan dwelling itself. Whether it was the house you were born into, or the barracks you were forced to inhabit, the architecture of Sparta was an extension of its philosophy, functional, severe, and utterly indifferent to human comfort. Imagine a simple, rectangular structure. The walls are not made of finely cut, interlocking stone, but of rough-hewn timber and, more commonly, sun-dried mud bricks. The foundation is little more than a line of stones set into the earth. There is no insulation. There is no concept of sealing drafts. The mud brick, once damp from the winter air, never truly dries and seems to radiate a perpetual chill. The gaps between the timber frames are stuffed with a mixture of clay and straw, but this is a temporary and imperfect solution. The biting winds from the Taygetos mountains find their way through 100 tiny, unseen cracks. You never experience stillness indoors. There is always a current of cold air moving somewhere, a ghostly touch on the back of your neck, or a persistent chill around your ankles. The roof is perhaps the most miserable feature. It consists of rough wooden beams overlaid with thatch, or, in some cases, crude ceramic tiles. These are not the neatly overlapping, watertight tiles of a Roman villa. They are heavy, poorly fitted, and prone to cracking in the cold. When it rains sand, the winter rain in Laconia is a cold, persistent, and demoralizing affair. The water inevitably finds its way inside. It is not a dramatic leak, but a slow, constant drip, drip, drip. One drip lands on your reed bed, slowly turning your only resting place into a sodden, icy clump. Another lands near the hearth, creating a muddy puddle on the hard-packed earth floor. The entire structure smells perpetually of damp earth, wet wool, and mildew. Look to the floor. There are no polished wood planks, no mosaics, no carpets. There is only the earth upon which the house was built, packed down hard by years of use. It is cold, always cold, and in the damp of winter, it turns clammy and soft under your bare feet. Any spills, any tracked-in mud, any waste becomes part of the floor. The concept of hygiene as you understand it is a distant dream. There are openings for a door and perhaps a couple of windows, but these are not fitted with glass or even stretched animal hide. They are often just gaping holes in the wall, perhaps covered at night by a heavy woolen or leather flap. During the day, they must be left open to let in what little light the gray winter sky offers. And with the light comes the cold, the wind, and the damp. Closing the flap at night plunges the room into absolute, claustrophobic darkness, and only minimally lessens the relentless draft. At the center of this miserable box is the hearth. This is the single source of heat in the entire dwelling. It is little more than a designated patch of floor, perhaps ringed with a few stones. Above it, a hole in the roof allows some, but not all, of the smoke to escape. Fuel is a constant concern. Wood must be gathered from the surrounding hillsides, a difficult and often forbidden task for a boy in the Agoge. The fire is small, smoky, and jealously guarded. Its warmth extends only a few feet in any direction. Huddling close means you are choking on acrid smoke, and one side of your body might feel a hint of warmth, while your back remains exposed to the chilling drafts swirling through the room. There is no furniture in the way you would think of it. No comfortable chairs, no soft couches, no tables for leisurely meals. There might be a few rough wooden benches, a simple stool, or a storage chest, but everything is utilitarian, hard, and uncomfortable. The space is communal, a place for sleeping and little else. Now, place yourself back in the barracks. It is simply this same miserable design, scaled up to house dozens of boys. The drafts are magnified. The damp is pervasive. The single hearth is utterly inadequate to warm such a large, open space. The competition for a spot near the fire is fierce and often violent, another small, daily struggle for survival. You lie on your pile of frigid reeds, listening to the wind howl outside, and more disturbingly, inside the building. You watch the water drip from the ceiling, a slow and steady metronome counting down the miserable hours of the night. The house, the barracks, these are not shelters. They are part of the trial. The state has designed your living conditions to be an extension of the Agoge's training. The constant exposure, the lack of respite from the cold, is intended to toughen you, to make you accustomed to hardship so that the conditions of a military campaign will feel like an improvement. For you, the modern soul, this home, is a death trap. Your body, expecting and needing a place to recover and regenerate heat, finds none. You are perpetually cold, perpetually damp, and perpetually on the defensive, even in the one place you should feel safe. The architecture itself is an instrument of state policy, ensuring that the Spartan winter reaches you not just outside, but deep within the walls of your own dwelling. The physical cold attacking your body from the outside is amplified by a gnawing emptiness from within. This is not the incidental hunger of a missed meal. It is a fundamental, state-sanctioned policy of institutionalized malnutrition. In the Spartan system, food is not for pleasure, it is not for comfort, and it is barely even for sustenance. Food is yet another tool of control, and in winter, its scarcity becomes a weapon of profound cruelty. You must first understand the foundation of the Spartan diet, the famous black broth, or melazomos. Cast aside any notion of a hearty, warming stew. This is a foul, infamous concoction. Its core ingredients are boiled pig's blood, pork, salt, and a large quantity of vinegar. The vinegar's purpose is not primarily for flavor, but as a preservative and to prevent the blood from coagulating. Imagine its taste: metallic, sour, and salty, with a lumpy, unsettling texture from the bits of meat. A visiting Sybarite, a man from a city famed for its luxury, once tasted it and famously declared that he now understood why Spartans were so willing to die in battle. For you, this is not a once-in-a-lifetime curiosity. It is your daily reality. You are summoned for your communal meal, the syssitia. You and the other boys of your cohort sit on hard benches in the smoky, drafty hall. A small clay bowl is thrust in front of you, filled with a meager ladleful of the dark, unappetizing liquid. Alongside it, you receive a single piece of barley bread. This bread is not soft or leavened. It is a hard, dense, and often stale cake of coarse ground barley, a grain considered inferior to wheat by other Greeks. This is your entire ration. During the summer and autumn harvest, this meager portion is supplemented by a slightly greater abundance of figs, cheese, and olives. But now it is winter. The fig trees are bare, skeletal claws scratching at the gray sky. The olive harvest is long past. The flocks of goats and sheep that provide milk for cheese are producing less, their own bodies struggling against the cold and sparse grazing. The landscape, which offered some small opportunities for foraging in the warmer months, is now barren and frozen. The Spartan state makes no special provision for this. The rations do not increase to compensate for the body's increased need for calories to fight the cold. The opposite is true. The overall food supply of the city dwindles, and your portion, already inadequate, shrinks even further. The hunger you felt in the summer now deepens into a constant, debilitating ache. You find it difficult to concentrate on your training. Your movements become sluggish. Every command from the paidonomos feels like a monumental effort. The cold seeps into your bones not just from the air, but from the very lack of fuel to burn within you. This is all by design. The state wants you to be hungry. As discussed in the Agoge, hunger is the goad that forces you to learn the arts of stealth and theft. But now, in the depths of winter, this educational exercise becomes a desperate life or death gamble. The game is harder. The natural world offers less to steal. Wild edibles are gone. Small animals are hibernating or harder to track in the cold. Your only real targets are the pantries of full citizens or the jealously guarded food stores of the helos, the state slaves who farm the land. The risks are enormous. A helot will not hesitate to kill a boy he finds, trying to steal his family's precious winter supply. A Spartan citizen who catches you will deliver the prescribed punishment without a flicker of mercy, a brutal public flogging that lays your back open with lashes. In your weakened, half-starved state, such a beating could be a death sentence, the wounds becoming infected in the unsanitary conditions, your body lacking the resources to heal itself. So you are trapped in a vicious cycle. The cold and the strenuous training burn through your calories, making you desperately hungry. The hunger weakens you, making you more susceptible to the cold and less capable during your training, which in turn earns you punishments. To alleviate the hunger, you must risk a punishment that could cripple or kill you. Every waking moment is consumed by this bleak calculus of risk versus reward. You start to see the world not as a place of people and things, but as a landscape of potential food sources and the dangers guarding them. Another boy is not just a peer, he is a competitor for the same scarce resources. A sleeping dog is not a pet, it is a potential meal, if you are daring and skilled enough to catch and kill it silently. This constant, gnawing hunger, combined with the cold, has a profound psychological effect. It strips away any remaining vestiges of higher thought. Morality, empathy, camaraderie, these concepts become luxuries you cannot afford. Your entire world shrinks to the immediate, animalistic needs of your own body, the need for warmth and the need for food. You lie on your reed bed at night, not dreaming of glory or home, but fantasizing about a full loaf of bread, the phantom taste of roasted meat, the feeling of a stomach that is not aching with emptiness. For a modern person, accustomed to 3 meals a day, and the simple expectation that food will be available, this would be an unbearable torture. Your body, not adapted to such scarcity, would rapidly break down. Your metabolism would slow, you would become lethargic, and your immune system would collapse. The common cold could escalate to fatal pneumonia. A small cut could lead to a systemic infection. The Spartan system assumes that the weak will perish and considers this a positive outcome. In the harsh economy of a Spartan winter, you are simply not profitable enough to be fed, and your inability to survive this institutionalized hunger is merely proof that you were never worthy of being a Spartan in the first place. The gnawing hunger within and the architectural chill of your shelter are compounded by a third, inescapable element of your misery: what you are, or rather, what you are not, allowed to wear. Spartan doctrine extended its obsession with austerity to the most personal level. Fashion was a sign of vanity, and comfort a symptom of decay. The result was a dress code of such brutal simplicity that in winter it became a primary instrument of torment and a direct threat to your life. Upon entering the Agoge, you were issued your uniform for the next 13 years, a single, all-purpose garment known as a himation. This was not a tailored piece of clothing. It was a large, rectangular piece of heavy wool, closer to a blanket or a shawl than a modern coat. It was your shirt, your coat, and your blanket. There was nothing else. No undergarments, no tunic beneath it for an extra layer, and, most critically, no shoes. This was the law. From the balmiest days of summer to the most frigid nights of winter, your attire remained unchanged. The justification for this was, as always, rooted in the philosophy of hardening. A boy accustomed to layers of clothing would be soft. A body exposed to the elements would become resilient, capable of ignoring heat and cold. A true Spartan, the logic went, should be master of his own physical sensations, not a slave to them. For you, this doctrine translates into a constant, unending state of physical distress. Let's re-examine a typical winter day. You wake in the pre-dawn darkness, your body already chilled from a night on a damp reed bed with only the himation for a covering. You pull the coarse, damp wool tighter around you, but it offers little comfort. Wool is an excellent insulator when dry, but once it becomes saturated with the damp air and leaking rainwater of the barracks, it becomes a heavy, cold shroud that actively draws heat away from your body. It almost never fully dries. You are forced outside for morning exercises. The wind, that relentless wind from the Taygetos, finds every gap. You can wrap the himation tightly, but it is still a single piece of cloth. As you move, run, and fight. It shifts and opens, exposing your skin to the raw, icy air. You learn to tuck and pin it with a fierce efficiency, but it's a losing battle. The hem, dragging on the wet and muddy ground, becomes caked with an icy sludge that clings to your bare ankles and calves. The prohibition on footwear is perhaps the most insidious aspect of this policy. The Spartan elders claimed it strengthened the feet for running on any terrain. In reality, it is a direct assault on your body's ability to regulate its temperature. Your feet are a critical area for heat exchange. Walking barefoot on frozen, muddy ground is like standing on a block of ice. The cold travels from the soles of your feet upwards, a relentless invasion that your circulatory system fights a desperate battle against. The consequences are immediate and unavoidable. Your feet are perpetually numb, crisscrossed with cuts and abrasions from the sharp stones and frozen earth. These minor wounds, constantly exposed to mud and filth, rarely heal properly. They become inflamed, infected, and ulcerated. Walking becomes a constant, throbbing pain. The risk of frostbite is not a risk, it is a certainty. You will see older boys with toes that are blackened, dead nubs of flesh, lost to the cold in a previous winter. This is not seen as a tragedy, but as a testament to their endurance. They survived. You look at your own feet, red and swollen, and wonder if yours will suffer the same fate. This constant, systemic heat loss affects your entire body. To keep your core warm, your body constricts the blood vessels in your extremities. Your hands, feet, ears, and nose become icy and numb. This is a survival mechanism, but it comes at a great cost. Your fine motor skills vanish. Your fingers are too stiff and clumsy to properly fletch an arrow or tie a complex knot. Your focus is shattered, not just by hunger, but by the distracting and overwhelming sensation of being cold to your very core. You will become intimately familiar with the stages of hypothermia, the initial, violent shivering that racks your entire body, a desperate attempt by your muscles to generate heat. Then, as your core temperature drops further, the shivering may lessen or stop, a dangerous sign that your body is losing its battle. Your mind becomes slow and cloudy. You feel a strange sense of apathy and overwhelming fatigue. It is a seductive feeling, the desire to simply lie down in the mud and sleep. This is the winter's most dangerous trap. The paidonomos and older boys are trained to recognize this state, and their cure is not a warm blanket, but a savage beating, the pain intended to shock your system back into a state of alert consciousness. The doctrine of the single cloak ensures there is no escape. When you come inside, after a day of training in the sleet, you cannot change into dry clothes. You sit shivering in your wet himation, knowing it will likely still be damp when you wake the next morning. You huddle with others, a mass of damp wool and shivering bodies, sharing misery but little warmth. Your very clothing, the one thing meant to protect you from the elements, has been turned against you, becoming an agent of your suffering, a constant reminder of the Spartan creed. What does not kill you does not make you stronger. It simply proves you were not weak enough to be killed yet. For you, this philosophy is a death sentence, delivered one shiver at a time. Inevitably, the combined assault of cold, malnutrition, and exposure will break through your body's defenses. You will get sick. In the modern world, this is a commonplace inconveniency, a trip to the doctor, a course of antibiotics, a few days of rest. In Spartan winter, sickness is not an inconvenience. It is a profound crisis that reveals the society's deepest and most terrifying beliefs about human worth. There is no Spartan Hippocrates. Medicine in Lacedaemon is not a science. It is a crude mixture of folklore, religious superstition, and a grim, fatalistic pragmatism. The prevailing view is not that disease is caused by pathogens, but that it is a manifestation of divine displeasure, or, more damningly, a sign of inherent physical or moral weakness. To fall ill is not just a misfortune, it is a personal failing. Your first symptom is a cough. At first, It's just a dry tickle in your throat. But in the relentlessly damp air, it quickly deepens into a rattling, productive cough that shakes your entire frame. Each spasm is agony for your hunger-cramped stomach muscles. The other boys in the barracks eye you with a mixture of contempt and fear. You are now a liability. Your weakness could, in their minds, be contagious, not just as a sickness, but as a spirit of infirmity. There is no infirmary. There are no healers dedicated to your care. You are expected to continue with your training. To admit you are too sick to run, to wrestle, or to stand guard would be an admission of failure so complete that it invites brutal punishment. The paidonomos might see your wheezing and feverish flush not as symptoms of illness, but as evidence of malingering, of trying to shirk your duties. The prescribed cure would be more drills, more exposure to sweat out the weakness. As your condition worsens, escalating from a simple chest cold into what you would recognize as bronchitis or pneumonia, your options dwindle to nothing. You lie on your reed bed, shivering uncontrollably now, not from the cold but from a raging fever. Your lungs feel as though they are filling with fluid. Every breath is a shallow, painful struggle. You are acutely aware that you are alone. No one will bring you a warm broth or even a sip of clean water. Your very presence is an offense to the Spartan ideal. What little medical knowledge exists is of no help. A local woman might be known for her knowledge of herbs, but her remedies are based on the doctrine of like cures like or sympathetic magic. She might prescribe a bitter, lung-shaped herb, believing its appearance will aid your breathing. Or perhaps a ritual will be performed to appease Asclepius, the god of healing, but the offering will be made with a detached hope at best. The gods, it is understood, favor the strong. If you are dying, it is likely because they have judged you unworthy of their intervention. There is no concept of quarantine. You remain in the barracks, your coughing fit spraying infectious droplets throughout the shared, enclosed space. It's only a matter of time before another boy, his own body worn down by the winter, succumbs to the same ailment. This does not foster sympathy, but resentment. Your sickness is a threat to the group, to the Agoge. As you grow weaker, you cease to be a person and become a problem. You cannot train. You cannot contribute. You consume resources, however meager, without providing any return. This is anathema to the Spartan worldview. In a city-state where every individual's value is measured solely by their utility to the state, a chronically sick boy has a value of 0. You lie in a fever dream, halfway between the living world and whatever comes next. The faces of the other boys are distant, hostile blurs. The constant chill of the room, the gnawing hunger, the pain in your chest all merge into a single, overwhelming tide of misery. You may even be moved, not to a place of care, but simply dumped in a corner, out of the way, to live or die without disturbing the unit's routine. Your modern immune system, unconditioned to such a host of pathogens in such a weakened state, would surrender quickly. But even for a boy born into this world, the odds are grim. Without antibiotics, pneumonia is a deadly killer. Without an understanding of virology, the flu can sweep through a barracks and decimate it. Without a concept of sanitation, infections fester and spread. If you die, there will be no great mourning. Your passing will be noted with a stoic, emotionless practicality. Your body will be removed and disposed of without ceremony. Your place in the barracks will be taken by another boy. The system will continue, uninterrupted. You have simply failed the most fundamental test. The winter, in its role as Sparta's unforgiving quality control inspector, has found a defect and removed it from the production line. To be sick in Sparta was to be on trial, and in the heart of winter, the verdict was almost always guilty, and the sentence was death. Your struggle against the Spartan winter did not begin at the age of 7 in the Agoge. It began at the moment of your birth. Your first test was not against a drill instructor or a bitter wind, but against the cold, unblinking judgment of your own people. The shadow that loomed over your cradle was not one of loving protection, but the literal and metaphorical shadow of Mount Taygetos, a place of execution for the imperfect. The Spartan state's obsession with perfection began not on the training field, but in the birthing room. When you were born, you were not immediately swaddled and given to your mother. Instead, you were bathed not in warm water, but in wine. The logic behind this bizarre and painful ritual was that the wine would cause a weak or epileptic infant to convulse and perish, while a strong one would emerge unscathed. So, your first sensation in this world was the shock of cold, astringent liquid on your raw, newborn skin. Assuming you survived this initial ordeal, you were not yet safe. Your father then took you from the midwife, wrapped you in a simple cloth, and carried you not home, but to a designated place called the Lesha, a sort of council hall. Here, you were presented to the elders of your tribe. These were not doting grandfathers, but grim-faced, pragmatic assessors of human stock. They were there to perform the most important act of quality control for the state. They took you and examined you with the dispassionate eye of a farmer inspecting livestock. They were not looking for the cute features that a modern parent would cherish. They were looking for defects. Was your body well formed? Were your limbs straight and strong? Was there any sign of physical deformity? Any blemish? Any hint of weakness or illness? This was not a medical examination. It was a pass-fail test for the right to live. The elder's judgment was final and absolute. If you were deemed healthy, strong, and a promising future warrior for Sparta, you were handed back to your father. He was then allotted a portion of public land at Chlorosto. Support your upbringing. You were officially accepted as a future citizen. Your life could begin. But if the elders found any fault, no matter how minor a clubfoot, a birthmark they deemed inauspicious, a frail-looking torso, or even if you simply seemed too small or sickly, your fate was sealed. You were judged unfit, a liability, a drain on the state's resources, and a pollution of its pure warrior gene pool. Your father would not take you home. He was commanded by the state to abandon you. He would carry you, his own child, up the treacherous slopes of the Taygetos mountain range to a deep chasm known as the Apothete, which translates chillingly to the deposits. There, you would be left to die. Imagine that scene, a newborn infant, alone on a cold mountain pass. You are exposed to the elements, to the scavenging birds and wild animals. This practice happened year-round, but to be born in the winter and judged wanting was an especially swift sentence. You would not last long against the piercing winds and freezing temperatures. Your life, a mere few hours or days old, would end from exposure, a tiny, unheard cry, swallowed by the immense, indifferent silence of the mountains. This was not considered murder. It was not even a tragedy. In the Spartan mindset, it was a necessary and logical act of civic hygiene. It was eugenics in its most raw and brutal form, a preemptive strike against weakness before it could take root in society. This practice cast a long, cold shadow over every family. Parents looked at their newborn infants not just with love, but with a terrifying anxiety. Would their child pass the test? Every pregnancy was a gamble. Even if you passed, the specter of Taygetos remained. This act, at the very beginning of life, established the fundamental principle of Spartan existence. Your life is not your own. It belongs to the state, and its value is purely conditional. You have been granted the privilege of living because you have demonstrated potential, but this privilege can be revoked at any time should you fail to meet expectations. This is the psychological ground zero of your Spartan life. You survived your first winter, the metaphorical winter of judgment at the Leshabe, a sheer accident of birth. You were born without visible flaws, but you carry the implicit knowledge that you were, at one point, just a single dissenting vote away from being discarded on a mountainside. There is no concept of unconditional love or inherent self-worth. Your value has been quantified and approved, but this approval is contingent on future performance. The fear of failure, the fear of being deemed unfit later in life, is woven into the very fabric of your being. Before you ever felt the sting of a warden's whip or the ache of hunger, you were taught the ultimate lesson. In Sparta, survival is not a right, but a prize awarded only to the flawless. Thus far, we have focused on your brutal but theoretically noble path as a Spartan citizen in training. Your suffering is immense, yet it is framed as a crucible, a means to an end, becoming one of the elite warrior masters of Greece. But now, you must remove the thin woolen cloak of the Agoge student and imagine yourself in a far more wretched state. You must imagine you are a helot. You are not a citizen. You are not even considered fully human. You are a helot, a member of the vast, subjugated population of Messenians and Laconians who were conquered by the Spartans generations ago. You are, in essence, property of the state, permanently bound to the land you farm the claros of a Spartan master you rarely see. Your entire existence has one purpose: to labor and produce the food and resources that allow your Spartan overlords to dedicate their entire lives to warfare. Your suffering does not forge you into a warrior. It is simply the miserable, unchangeable condition of your life. And in winter, your life, already a daily grind of hardship, descends into a special kind of hell. While your Spartan master resides in the city, you live on the agricultural land, in a shack even more primitive than the Spartan dwellings. It is a hovel of rough stones, mud, and decaying thatch, offering minimal protection from the elements. The piercing wind is your constant companion. The damp earth floor is your bed. There is no central hearth, only a small fire pit for cooking, and fuel is precious. The wood you gather is not truly your own. It belongs to the land, and therefore to the state. Taking too much could be seen as theft. Your clothing is a ragged collection of coarse-spun tunics and cloaks, worn until they literally fall apart. There is no law, like the one governing your Spartan counterparts, forbidding you from wearing more layers, but this is a meaningless freedom. You simply do not have them. You wear what you have, which is never enough. Footwear might be a crude pair of sandals or wraps made of scrap leather, but they are poor protection against the frozen, muddy fields you must work. Your labor does not cease in winter. While the major planting and harvesting seasons are over, the demands are endless. Fences must be mended, tools repaired, olive trees pruned, and livestock tended to. You are out in the fields from before sunrise until after sunset, your body aching with a fatigue that settles deep into your bones. The work is cold, wet, and punishing. Imagine tending to a flock of sheep on an exposed hillside, the wind cutting through your rags, your hands too numb to properly grip your staff. Your Spartan master, sitting in his communal hall, is entitled to a fixed, large portion of your harvest. You and your family must survive on whatever is left. In a lean year, what's left can be perilously close to nothing. Malnutrition is not an educational tool for you. It is a constant, life-threatening reality. But the greatest terror of the Helots' winter is not the cold or the hunger. It is the Spartans themselves. The long, dark nights of winter are the traditional season for the Crypteia. The Crypteia was a uniquely Spartan institution, a brutal form of secret police or death squad, comprised of the most promising and ruthless young men from the Agoge. As a final test of their skill and their rejection of all moral sentiment, they would be sent out into the countryside, armed with only a dagger. Their mission was to live off the land and, under the cover of darkness, to hunt and murder helots. The official purpose was to terrorize the Hello population, to crush any burgeoning thoughts of rebellion before they could even form. It was a cull. They targeted the strongest, the most intelligent, the most defiant-looking helots, anyone who might one day become a leader. Now, picture your life as a helot. Every night, when darkness falls, you and your family extinguish your small fire and huddle together in the blackness of your shack. Every snap of a twig outside, every rustle in the thatch, sends a jolt of pure terror through you. Is it an animal, or is it the cryptea? They are trained to be ghosts. You will not hear them coming. You might fall asleep, exhausted from a day of back-breaking labor, only to be awoken by the feel of a dagger at your throat. Your son, your husband, your brother, might go out to check on the livestock and simply never return, his body found days later in a ditch. There is no recourse. There is no justice. These are state-sanctioned murders. To fight back would be to invite an overwhelming and murderous reprisal on your entire community. You can only hide, pray, and try to make yourself as inconspicuous as possible. The winter nights, already long and cold, become an extended period of psychological torture. You are being hunted in your own home. For you, a Spartan citizen in training, the Hello is a figure of contempt, a subhuman to be controlled and exploited. But in this moment, as you inhabit his reality, you see the truth. Your suffering in the Agoge is a trial with a potential reward. The Hello's suffering is a permanent condition with no hope of advancement, a generational nightmare of servitude punctuated by random, terrifying acts of violence. The Spartan winter is cold for everyone, but for the Helot, it is a season where the natural cruelty of the elements is amplified by the organized, predatory cruelty of man. You might die of pneumonia in the barracks, but a Helot is just as likely to die from a knife in the dark. Let us now shift our perspective again. You are not a boy in the Agoge, nor a hunted Helot. You are a Spartan woman. From the outside, your position appears privileged compared to other Greek women. You are not confined to the home. You receive an education. You participate in athletic competitions. You can own and inherit property. Yet these freedoms are not for your benefit. They are, like everything else in Sparta, in service to the state. As a woman, your body is a precious resource, your primary function to be a broodmare for warriors. And in winter, the unique cruelties of this role are laid bare. Your girlhood was a strange parallel to the boys' Agoge. While not as brutally systematic, you too were raised to be tough. You trained in gymnastics, discus, and javelin, often exercising in public, a practice that shocked other Greeks. The purpose was to make your body strong and athletic, fit to bear healthy, robust children. The logic was cold and simple. Strong mothers produce strong sons. But this physical strength comes at the cost of emotional devastation. Your marriage is not a matter of love or personal choice. It is an arrangement, often made in secret. A young Spartan man, still living in the barracks, might begin to visit you at your parents' home under the cover of darkness. This clandestine marriage by capture is a brief, furtive affair before he must slip back to his unit before dawn. There is no romance, no building of a shared life. It is a biological imperative, conducted with the same lack of sentiment as the state-sanctioned breeding of horses. You become pregnant. The joy and trepidation of a mother-to-be are overshadowed by a single, terrifying question: will the child be perfect? You live for months under the shadow of Mount Taygetos. You eat what you can, exercise as you are told, all in the desperate hope of producing a son who will pass the inspection of the elders. Now, imagine giving birth in the Spartan winter. The home is cold and drafty. The assistance is rudimentary. The moment the child is born, the ordeal of judgment begins. If the baby is a girl, there is a quiet sense of disappointment. A daughter is a future producer of warriors, but a son is a warrior himself. If it is a boy, your heart leaps with a fearful pride. But this is immediately followed by the terrifying wait for the verdict from the Lesha. When your husband takes your newborn son to be inspected, you are left alone, your body aching from childbirth, your mind consumed by an agony of suspense. The relief, if he is returned, is immense, but it is a relief tinged with the cold understanding of what would have happened otherwise. Your role as a mother, is then immediately subverted. You are not meant to coddle your son. You are to be his first instructor in the Spartan way. You must be stern, unemotional, and suppress any instinct to comfort him. The state fears that a mother's love will make a boy soft. Nurses, often helot women, are assigned to help, and they are under strict orders to not spoil the child. Crying is to be ignored. He is to be accustomed to darkness and solitude. The day your son turns 7 is the day your heart is truly broken, though you are forbidden to show it. The state comes and takes him away to the Agoge. You will see him only intermittently for the next 13 years. You must surrender your child to a system you know is designed to systematically dismantle his personality, to inflict pain, hunger, and cold upon him, to transform him from your son into a tool of the state. During the winter, your anxiety for him is a constant, gnawing presence. You know he is out there, barefoot in the freezing mud. You know his rations are meager. You picture him shivering on his reed bed, hungry and alone, but you cannot help him. To attempt to sneak him extra food or a warmer cloak would be a crime against the state, shaming both you and your son. You must trust in the brutal system. You must project an image of unyielding strength. You become famous for your laconic, stoic sayings. When you hand your grown son his shield, as he goes off to war, you utter the legendary phrase, "Tan e epitas," with it or on it. Come back with your shield, victorious, or be carried back upon it, dead. There is no third option, no honorable retreat. You are sending your child to his potential death and giving him the command to choose death over dishonor. This is the hidden tragedy of the Spartan woman. You are granted physical freedom and social influence unheard of in other Greek cities, but you are denied the fundamental human connection of a loving marriage and the right to raise your own children with tenderness. You are a vessel, a manager of a household, and a purveyor of brutal, state-approved aphorisms. The winter cold that seeps into your home is nothing compared to the cold that must inhabit your heart. To survive as a Spartan mother, you must cauterize your own maternal instincts, becoming a willing accomplice in the state's indoctrination of your own flesh and blood. Every stoic farewell, every suppressed tear, is a small death inside you. To truly understand why you would not survive a Spartan winter, we must move beyond the physical torments of cold, hunger, and sickness. We must dissect the very mind of a Spartan, for it is here, in the landscape of their consciousness, that the most alien and insurmountable barrier lies. The Spartans did not simply endure hardship. They cultivated it, revered it, and built their entire psychological framework around its embrace. Your modern mind, conditioned to seek comfort, value emotion, and cherish individuality, would shatter against the monolithic Spartan ideal. From the moment a Spartan child is deemed fit to live, they are subjected to a relentless psychological conditioning. The goal is to eradicate the very concept of the self as you understand it. Your personal feelings, desires, and fears are not only irrelevant, they are treasonous. They are weaknesses that endanger the polis, the city-state, which is the only entity that matters. Imagine your inner world being systematically dismantled. The fear you feel when the Paidonomos approaches with his rod is not to be acknowledged as fear. It is a sensation to be ignored and overcome. The love you might feel for a friend or sibling is a dangerous attachment, a potential conflict of loyalty that distracts from your absolute devotion to the state. Laughter is rare and suspect. Tears are a disgrace. The full spectrum of human emotion, which you consider essential to a meaningful life, is compressed into a narrow, state-approved band of duty, stoicism, and martial pride. Pain is the primary tool of this conditioning. In your world, pain is a signal that something is wrong, something to be stopped or avoided. In Sparta, pain is a lesson. It is a purifier. The flogging you receive for being caught stealing is not just a punishment, it is a neurological reprogramming. It forges a powerful association in your brain. Failure leads to agony. The sting of the whip on your back becomes the physical manifestation of the state's displeasure. Over time, you learn not just to endure pain, but to expect it, to see it as a normal and necessary part of existence. A day without some form of physical hardship would feel unnatural, suspect. The Spartan obsession with lacanisters, pithy species, another psychological weapon. It is not about being clever or witty. It is about eliminating superfluous expression, which is seen as a sign of an undisciplined mind. You are taught to speak only when necessary, and to say only what is essential. This starves the part of your brain that finds connection and release through communication. There is no venting, no sharing of fears in the dead of night, no lengthy discussions of dreams or hopes. The barracks is a place of profound social closeness, and yet absolute emotional isolation. You are surrounded by others, yet you are utterly alone with your own tightly controlled thoughts. This environment breeds a specific and toxic form of social pressure. Your worth is determined entirely by how well you perform in the eyes of your peers and superiors. There is no private sphere in which you can relax and be yourself. You are always on display, always being judged. Are you flinching from the cold? Are you eating your black broth with the appropriate indifference? Are you showing too much pride in a victory, or too much despair in a defeat? Any deviation from the Stoic norm is noted, mocked, and punished. This creates a state of constant, low-level paranoia. Your comrades are your brothers in arms, but they are also your fiercest rivals and your most unforgiving judges. Now, place this mindset into the context of winter. The physical misery of the season becomes a perfect storm for the Spartan psyche. The relentless cold is not just a weather phenomenon. It is a divine test of your mental fortitude. The gnawing hunger is not a logistical problem. It is an opportunity to prove you are above base physical desires. Every shivering moment, every painful step on the frozen ground, is a chance to reaffirm your Spartan identity. To complain would be to fail this test. To seek warmth or comfort would be to admit that your individual sensations matter more than the collective ideal. This is why you, a modern person, could not survive. Your mind is a tool for problem solving. Faced with the Spartan winter, your instinct would be to innovate. You would try to build a better shelter, weave a warmer blanket, design shoes, find more efficient ways to get food. All of these logical, rational survival instincts are forbidden in Sparta. To try and alleviate the hardship is to fundamentally misunderstand the point. The hardship is the point. You would be trapped in a psychological cage. You would see the suffering around you and feel empathy, a desire to help the weak or the sick. This would be seen as a corrupting sentimentality. You would crave a moment of solitude and quiet reflection. This would be seen as deviant and antisocial. You would yearn for a word of kindness or a gesture of genuine affection. You would find none. The Spartan winter would not just kill your body, it would first crush your spirit. It would starve your soul long before it starved your belly, leaving you an empty, despairing shell in a world that worships the very emptiness it creates. While every Spartan boy is conditioned by brutality, the most promising are chosen for a final, terrifying graduation. If you proved yourself to be exceptionally ruthless, cunning, and devoid of pity during your years in the Agoge, you might be selected for the crypteia. To call this a secret police is to sanitize its true nature. The crypteia was an institution of state-sponsored terror, a death squad whose primary purpose was to control the Helo population through random and unpredictable murder. And its members thrived in the oppressive darkness of the Spartan winter. Imagine you have just turned 18. You have survived the Agoge. You are at the peak of your physical conditioning, your mind hardened into a weapon. You are taken aside by the the powerful magistrates of Sparta. They see in you not just a soldier, but a potential leader, a guardian of the Spartan state's deepest, darkest secret, that its entire glorious edifice is built on the back of a vast, subjugated population that outnumbers the citizens by perhaps 10 to 1, and must be kept in a perpetual state of fear. You are initiated into the crypteia. Your instructions are simple and chilling. You are to be sent out into the Laconian countryside alone. You are to take with you nothing but a single dagger and the most meager rations. Your task is to remain unseen during the day, hiding in the wilderness, sleeping in ditches or caves. At night, you are to descend into the Helot farmlands and kill. The long, cold nights of winter are the perfect season for your work. Darkness falls early and lingers late, providing a generous cloak for your movements. The cold drives the helots indoors, making them concentrated targets in their hovels. The wind and rain help to mask any sounds you might make as you stalk your prey through the muddy fields. The winter itself is your accomplice. You are not hunting randomly. You are an instrument of state policy. Your targets are specific. You are to identify and eliminate any helo who displays signs of strength, intelligence, or leadership. The one who works his plot of land too efficiently. The one who stands a little too straight, whose eyes do not carry the requisite look of cowed submission. The one who is physically imposing, who might serve as a rallying point for a future revolt. You are a surgeon, tasked with excising any potentially cancerous cells from the servile body politic. Picture yourself now, moving through the freezing, wind-swept night. Your senses are honed to a razor's edge. You have spent years learning to move silently, to endure hunger and cold without complaint. All that training now has a lethal purpose. You creep up to a lonely farmstead, a dim light from a small fire flickering within. You wait, listening, a predator assessing its prey. You are not fueled by rage or personal hatred. You are performing a duty, a cold and calculated act of social control. You feel a sense of superiority, of power. You are the hidden blade of Sparta, the ultimate enforcer of the natural order. You slip inside the hovel. The family is asleep, huddled together for warmth. You identify your target, the strong-backed farmer, whose murder will sow terror in the hearts of his neighbors. Your movements are swift, silent, and economical. Your dagger finds his throat. There is a brief, muffled struggle, a gurgling sound that is quickly silenced. You do not linger. You do not gloat. You slip back out into the night, leaving behind a scene of unimaginable horror for the family to discover at dawn. You feel no remorse. Remorse is a weakness that was beaten out of you years ago. You feel only the grim satisfaction of a mission accomplished. Now, consider the profound psychological impact of this institution. For the Helots, it was an unending reign of terror, as we've seen. But for you, the Spartan perpetrator, it is the final stage of your dehumanization. The crypteia is a practical exam in murder. It solidifies the lesson that a helo is not a person, but an object, a threat to be managed. It forces you to rely on your most primal, predatory instincts. It isolates you completely, teaching you that ultimate strength lies in solitary, ruthless action. When you return to the city after your tour in the crypteia, you are a changed man. You have looked into the abyss, and you have become it. You are now truly ready to be a leader in a state that practices terror as a daily policy. You have proven you have the stomach for the ugly work that underpins Spartan society. As a modern person, this experience would be utterly shattering. You would be psychologically scarred by the act of cold-blooded murder, haunted by the faces of your victims. You would be crippled by guilt and post-traumatic stress. For a graduate of the crypteia, these are foreign concepts. He has simply passed his final exam. The winter night that served as his classroom has taught him the ultimate Spartan lesson. The most effective way to maintain order is to become the monster that stalks the darkness. You might think that in any society, no matter how harsh, wealth could provide a buffer against misery. A richer citizen could surely buy more firewood, better food, a sturdier home, or thicker blankets to survive the winter. But Sparta was not any society. Its entire economic system was a radical, bizarre experiment designed specifically to prevent wealth from translating into comfort. The very concept of money and luxury was treated as a corrupting poison, ensuring that during the winter, every citizen, from the humblest to the most powerful, was exposed to the same state-mandated misery. The foundation of this system was the abolition of conventional currency. The legendary lawgiver Lycurgus, in his quest to root out inequality and luxury, banned the use of gold and silver coins. In their place, he instituted an official currency made of iron. But this was not small, convenient iron coinage. The state-produced money was in the form of large, heavy, and unwieldy iron rods or discs that had been treated with vinegar while red hot. This process made the iron brittle and useless for any other purpose. Imagine trying to conduct commerce with this currency. A small purchase would require a clumsy armful of iron. A significant transaction, like buying a plot of land, if such a thing were even privately transacted, would require a cart and a team of oxen. The sheer logistical nightmare of using this money actively discouraged trade. Its purpose was to make the accumulation of wealth impractical and ridiculous. You couldn't hide your fortune under the floorboards. You would need a barn to store it. This effectively choked off most forms of commercial activity and turned Sparta into an economic island, isolated from the bustling trade of the wider Greek world. With no practical money, a vibrant market for goods could not develop. You couldn't simply go down to the Agora and buy a finely woven, warm woolen cloak from a merchant. Firstly, there were few merchants, as there was little profit to be made. Secondly, owning such a luxurious item would be a serious social and political liability. It would mark you as vain, decadent, and un-Spartan. Your peers would view you with suspicion and contempt. The ephors might well decide that you were a corrupting influence and confiscate your ostentatious possession. The economy was not based on commerce, but on land and labor. Upon becoming a full citizen, a Spartan man was granted a kleros, a plot of agricultural land which was farmed by helots. This was your entire source of income. The helots were required to deliver a fixed amount of produce: barley, wine, cheese, fig stow, you, their master. This produce was then pooled to supply your designated communal mess hall, the syssitia. It was not a system designed for profit, but for subsistence, and a barely adequate subsistence at that. There was no surplus for you to sell or to hoard for a harsher winter. This economic structure had profound consequences for your ability to survive the cold months. You could not buy more firewood because there was no centralized market for it, and paying for it with cumbersome iron rods was impractical. Firewood was a resource to be gathered, not purchased. You could not buy better, more nutritious food because the food system was a closed loop of production and state-controlled distribution through the mess halls. Everyone ate the same meager fare. You could not hire skilled craftsmen to improve your home, to seal the drafts, or tile the roof more effectively because the very act of spending wealth on domestic comfort was seen as a moral failing. This created a society of enforced, uniform hardship. Even a king was expected to live a life of stark simplicity. He slept on a similar hard bed, ate the same black broth in his mess hall, and wore the same simple cloak as any other citizen. While a king certainly wielded immense political and military power, he could not leverage it to acquire personal, physical comfort. He too was subject to the chilling drafts of a poorly built home and the meager rations of the state. This system ensures that there is absolutely no escape from the winter's cruelty. Your modern mindset, so deeply ingrained with the idea that money can solve problems, would be useless here. You would look at your simple, cold home and your shivering children and think, I must earn more to fix this. But there is no more to be earned. The system is designed to prevent it. Your instinct to trade, to save, to invest, to improve your material conditions, all the engines of economic survival, are criminalized, not by law, but by an unyielding social and political ideology. In Sparta, the cold is the great equalizer, intentionally maintained by an economic system that saw comfort not as a goal, but as the enemy. You are stripped of the most basic tool of self-preservation available in almost any other human society, the ability to use resources to protect yourself from the environment. In the Spartan winter, you are all equally poor, equally cold, and equally trapped. In most cultures, winter festivals are a source of light and warmth in the darkest time of the year. They are about community, feasting, and finding joy to ward off the gloom. In Sparta, even celebration was perverted into another form of ordeal. Festivals were not an escape from hardship, but a ritualized intensification of it, demanding new and even more creative displays of physical endurance and stoic suffering from its participants, especially the young. The most infamous of these was a rite of passage held in honor of the goddess Artemis Orthia. The sanctuary of Artemis Orthia was not a grand marble temple. It was an old, rustic site near the Eurotas River, a place that felt ancient and primal. Artemis Orthia was a syncretic deity, a fusion of the Olympian Artemis, huntress and goddess of the wild, with a much older, harsher, local goddess named Orthia, and the rituals performed in her honor reflected this grim, pre-classical origin. The climax of the festival honoring her was an event that Pausanias, a later Greek traveler, described with a mixture of awe and horror. It was a contest known as the Diamastagosis, which translates starkly as the severe scourging. It centered around the goddess's altar. The goal for a group of adolescent boys from the Agoge was to snatch cheeses that had been placed upon the altar. This sounds like a simple game, but it was turned into a spectacle of shocking brutality. Imagine you are one of the chosen boys. It is deep winter. You are, as always, clad only in your single, thin cloak. You are brought to the sanctuary, the air thick with the smell of damp earth, wood smoke, and a palpable tension. The altar stands there, stark and imposing. You and the other boys must approach it. As you do, you are set upon by older youths and men armed with scourge-heavy leather whips. Their task is to flog you, mercilessly, as you try to reach your goal. The purpose of the contest is not to successfully steal the cheese. The purpose is to endure the lashing. It is a public test of your courage and, more importantly, your ability to withstand extreme pain without flinching, without crying out, without showing any sign of weakness. The entire city turns out to watch. Your family, your friends, the elders, they are all there, their faces unreadable, observing you. This is not a scene of pity. It is a moment of intense scrutiny. A priestess of the goddess stands by, holding a small wooden statue of Artemis Orthia. It is said that the statue is light, but if the floggers strike with insufficient force, showing pity for a boy, the statue becomes inexplicably heavy in the priestess's hands, and she will berate them for their softness. There is no mercy, not from the crowd, not from the gods. The whips bite into the cold skin of your back, your shoulders, your legs. The first lash is a searing shock. The ones that follow blur into a roaring fire of agony. The leather raises angry, red welts, which quickly break open and bleed. Your warm blood runs down your cold skin, steaming in the winter air. Your vision narrows. Your head swims. The only things that exist are the pain, the bite of the whip, and the silent, judging eyes of the crowd. You must not scream. To scream is to bring shame upon yourself and your family for years to come. Some boys faint from the pain and blood loss. Others, in their fervor to prove their mettle, continue to endure the flogging until they collapse. According to some sources, boys occasionally died at the altar, their lives sacrificed to the goddess and the unyielding demands of Spartan society. Such a death was not considered a tragedy. It was the ultimate expression of Spartan virtue, a glorious end that would be celebrated. This is a Spartan festival. It is a religious ceremony where the community gathers to watch its children be tortured. It takes the daily, normalized violence of the Agoge and elevates it into a sacred spectacle. It teaches the most profound lesson of all, that your body is not your own, and your pain is a public commodity, a sacrifice to be offered up for the honor of the gods and the state. For a modern person, this event is almost incomprehensible. It is a vision of hell. It is child abuse, sanctified as religious practice. Your instinct would be to scream, to run, to protect the children, to decry the barbarism of the entire affair. You would see it as a symptom of a deeply sick society. To a Spartan, you would be the one who is sick. Your compassion, a sign of a debilitating weakness. In the Spartan winter, even the moments meant for communal joy are hijacked and transformed into another test you are guaranteed to fail, another horror your mind would refuse to accept. So far, we have explored the brutal realities of life within Sparta's rigid caste system as a citizen, a woman, or a hello. But what if you were none of these? What if you were an outsider, a foreigner drawn to Laconia by trade, curiosity, or misfortune? You might imagine that being free from the Agoge or the bonds of serfdom would be an advantage. You would be tragically mistaken. For an outsider, surviving a Spartan winter meant confronting a unique and chilling form of hostility. A state, enforced xenophobia known as Xenolasia. Surrounding the central territory of Sparta were the lands of the Perioikoi, which means those who dwell around. The Perioikoi were a unique subject class. They were not enslaved helots, but they were not Spartan citizens either. They were the craftsmen, merchants, fishermen, and manufacturers of Lacedaemon. They forged the bronze shields, tanned the leather, and produced the pottery that the Spartans themselves disdained to create. They were free men, but they had no political rights in Sparta, and were obligated to serve in the Spartan army. Imagine you are a Perioikoi blacksmith, living in a town on the coast. Your life is a constant balancing act. You enjoy a degree of economic freedom that a Spartan citizen does not, engaging in the trade and commerce they despise, yet you are utterly subordinate to them. A Spartan official can demand your service or commandeer your goods at any time. You pay tribute, you fight their wars, and in return, you are allowed a semblance of autonomy. In winter, your situation is precarious. You may have the means to acquire more food or a warmer home than a Spartan, but you live under the constant threat of their suspicion. Your modest prosperity could be viewed as a sign of uppity luxury. Unlike a full Spartan citizen who is protected, in theory, by his status, you are more vulnerable. Your loyalty is always in question. The Cryptia, while primarily focused on the helots, could easily turn their attention to a Perioikoi community deemed to be growing too independent. You live in the shadow of a power that both depends on you and deeply distrusts you. But the situation for a true foreigner, a Xenos, from another Greek city-state like Athens or Corinth, was far worse. Sparta practiced a formal policy of Xenolasia, which literally means driving out of foreigners. This was not just a general cultural unfriendliness. It was an official state doctrine of periodic, forcible expulsion. Let's say you are a trader from Athens who has arrived in a Perioikoi port just as winter begins to set in, hoping to sell your high-quality ceramics. At first, things might seem normal. The Perioikoi are willing to trade. But soon, the atmosphere changes. Spartan officials may arrive and declare a Xenolasia. The reason given could be anything. A fear of foreign spies, a desire to prevent the corruption of Spartan youth by decadent ideas, or a precaution against a plague. The true reason was a deep-seated paranoia about outside influence diluting their unique and fragile way of life. The decree is absolute. All foreigners must leave the territory of Lacedaemon immediately. There is no appeal. It doesn't matter if your ship is unseaworthy, if the mountain passes are snowed in, or if you have a wife and children with you. You must leave. To be caught within their borders after the deadline is to risk summary execution or enslavement. Imagine the panic. You are forced to abandon your business, perhaps taking a huge loss on your goods. You must now undertake a perilous journey in the heart of winter. The sea is treacherous, with violent storms that can sink a ship in minutes. The overland routes are miserable, muddy tracks, infested by bandits, and offering little shelter. The Spartans offer you no aid, no provisions for your journey. Their only concern is your absence. They are not just showing you the door, they are throwing you out into a blizzard. This policy made Sparta a black hole for outsiders. No one could build a life there. No one could trust that they would be safe. It created a society that was hermetically sealed, intellectually and culturally inbred. For you, the modern individual, who likely carries a global and multicultural worldview, this would be an oppressive and terrifying environment. Your very presence, your different accent, your unfamiliar clothes would mark you as a potential contaminant to be purged. To be an outsider in Sparta during the winter was to be completely cut off from any hope of safety or community. You were denied the brutal but structured support system of the Spartan citizen, the communal misery of the helot, and even the grudging acceptance of the perioikoi. You were simply an alien entity, a problem to be disposed of. The cold of the Spartan state's xenophobia was as deadly as any winter frost, ensuring that you, the foreigner, were the least likely of all to survive. We have walked through the frozen mud in the bare feet of a child in the Agoge. We have felt the gnawing, state-sanctioned hunger and the relentless chill in a house designed to welcome the wind. We have shivered in the single, damp cloak, been abandoned by a medical system that despises the sick, and stood in the terrifying shadow of Mount Taygetos. We have felt the knife of the Cryptia in the dark and the lash of the whip at a winter festival. We have seen how neither wealth, gender, nor outsider status could offer a true shield. Now, let us assemble these pieces and render a final judgment. Why would you, a modern human, be so utterly doomed to fail in a Spartan winter? The answer lies in a convergence of three irresistible forces: a perfect storm of environmental, societal, and psychological hostility against which you have no defense. First, there is the physical assault. Your body is simply not prepared. You are a product of a world that has systematically conquered discomfort. You have known central heating, waterproof clothing, fortified foods, and advanced medicine for your entire life. Your body's ability to adapt to extreme, prolonged cold and malnutrition has atrophied over generations. You would enter the Spartan winter with a compromised immune system and a metabolism unaccustomed to such brutal scarcity. The combination of hypothermia, frostbite, respiratory infections like pneumonia, and the sepsis from untreated wounds would overwhelm your system in a matter of weeks, if not days. You would be picked off by the environment long before you could even begin to grapple with the society. Your physical being is an artifact of a different reality, as unsuited to this world as a deep-sea fish is to the desert. Second, you would face the societal rejection. You are fundamentally incompatible with the Spartan polis. Your core values are the antithesis of theirs. You believe in individual rights, the pursuit of happiness, the virtue of compassion, and the importance of self-expression. To a Spartan, these are not just foreign concepts. They are the definitions of decadence and societal rot. Every instinct you have would be wrong. Your desire to help a suffering child would be punished. Your attempt to argue for a more logical or humane solution would be seen as insubordination. Your very presence, with your soft hands and even softer ideas, would be a contaminant. The system is not designed to accommodate you. It is designed to identify and purge you. You would be like a foreign organ introduced into a body, triggering a massive, violent, and fatal immune response from the entire society. Finally, and most profoundly, you would succumb to the psychological collapse. This is the element that would break you, even if, by some miracle, your body could withstand the physical torment. Your mind requires hope. It needs connection. It seeks meaning and finds solace in love and empathy. The Spartan winter would starve your soul. It is a state of being where beauty is weakness, love is a liability, and comfort is a crime. It is an existence stripped of every single psychological nutrient necessary for your mental well-being. Imagine the crushing weight of absolute despair. There is no hope for a warmer tomorrow, because warmth is forbidden. There is no one to confide in, because emotional intimacy is a sign of weakness. There is no escape, because the entire world, from the mountaintops to the laws to the hearts of the people around you, is a single, unified engine of hardship. You would find yourself in a state of profound anomie, a disconnection from the society around you so complete that it would lead to a total shutdown of your will to live. Long before a Spartan would need to kill you, you would lose the very reason to draw your next breath. You would simply surrender to the cold, not because your body gave out, but because your spirit was extinguished. Therefore, surviving a Spartan winter was never a matter of simple toughness. It was a matter of being a Spartana creature, forged from birth by this very system, a human being who had been systematically hollowed out and refilled with the cold, hard granite of the state's ideology. To survive, you would have to be willing to leave your newborn infant on a mountainside if they were deemed imperfect. You would have to watch your son be beaten and feel pride, not horror. You would have to be capable of slitting the throat of a sleeping farmer without remorse. You would have to see a friend die of pneumonia and feel not sorrow, but a grim satisfaction that a weakness had been purged from the ranks. You could not do these things because you are human, and that is why you would never survive a winter in ancient Sparta. You would not fall to a spear or a sword. You would be conquered by the cold, not just the cold that froze the water and cracked the stones, but the deeper, more profound cold that resided in the heart of Sparta itself.